Welcome back. As South Africans adjust to a new reality, lifestyle habits are changing that will in turn impact media habits. So this morning we are looking at the short to medium term impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the South African media environment. Berta is the Group Managing Director at Park Advertising, and they've compiled 25 points that they believe will impact media habits over the next few weeks and even months. Well, Chris is on Skype right now and will help us unpack the impact of COVID-19 on the media industry. Chris, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for making the time to chat to us this morning. When you were doing your assessment and looking at the possible impact that the COVID-19 outbreak will have on the media environment, what were you looking at exactly?
Good morning. One of the first things we looked at the impact from a business perspective. So as businesses make less money, therefore spend less money on advertising, what does that mean to media owners? As I'm sure you know, most newspapers, radio stations, newspapers, websites are all funded by advertising. So first of all, what's the impact from a business funding perspective? But secondly, and from a different angle, is looking at the consumer impact, how consumers change their media habits, and how we now with things like self-isolation, being at home, what's the impact on media like television, on radio, digital media, and how we use those media types and how that's going to change our consumer habits.
And when we talk about consumer habits, in layman terms, just break that down for us. Is it the fact that the way we're consuming media is now different? I know a lot of overseas celebrities are now moving a lot of their content online and are having online concerts. Is that applicable in the South African context? Are we likely to see more of that?
Yeah, exactly. I think a very good example is, let's use the example of sport. You know, live sport has been cancelled. A lot of people are self-isolating and working from home. So what that means is that from a media habit perspective, daytime television viewing is increasing. So where currently consumers would watch, only a small amount of consumers would watch television in the morning or during the day, or that's now increasing in numbers again, as people are working from home and finding time to distract themselves from work. So daytime television increasing, things like social media, we're seeing big growth in numbers there as well, as people use Twitter more as an example, as a news source, and using platforms like Facebook and Instagram more to be socially antisocial. And that's what we're seeing with the celebrities. You know, you can't physically interact with somebody, but you can socially interact with them on social media. So we're seeing big growth in numbers for platforms like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And we're seeing a change in profile. So when we talk about a change in consumer habits, is a consumer would have a habit of dropping kids off at school and going to work. That habit is changing now because they don't have to drop kids off at school anymore and they are at home. Therefore, they're more likely to listen to radio at home versus listening to radio in the car, and watching daytime television versus not watching daytime television.
Content from an advertiser's perspective is going to be a big thing, because with this COVID-19 outbreak, it means less and less new content will be available for us to consume. In an advertising space, what does that mean? There are millions that go into putting together a television ad. There's millions that go into radio spend. And yet consumers won't be able to get latest content in terms of products and services that are being put out. What does that mean, Chris?
It's got far-reaching implications. I think for starters, if you go look at production of content, if you go look at your favorite television show, whether that be Uzalo or Scheme Sam or whatever, all of those shows, when they get produced, they have more than 100 people together. You know, they're not being produced anymore. Now, luckily, most of those dramas have a 6-week pipeline. So in other words, they have 6 weeks of shows that have already been filmed that will be flighted. But we don't know how long this is going to last, right? So a lot of those shows might get to a point where they're not shooting them anymore. I mean, the producers union had meetings this week where they were talking about cancelling shooting of a lot of these dramas. So a lot of those dramas, we might not have content anymore. They might have to go into repeats. And at the same time, we've seen with sport, you know, live sport is still critical to television viewing. We're seeing it all over the show. And now, if you go look at a lot of television platforms, they're running repeats because there's no more live sport to broadcast. So it's changed. So as television broadcasters, we have to change our habits as well in order to be relevant to consumers and keep delivering that content that consumers are looking for.
Do you think what is currently happening now is going to force various industries to relook the way in which they do business? Looking from a South African context, we still see, the huge volumes of traffic already tell us that there's still that 9-to-5 culture deeply entrenched in the way that we do business. Are we likely to see a change in the framework, in the business framework, a more innovative using online services to perhaps engage our consumers more? Are there any opportunities on a positive level that will be presented post this pandemic?
Absolutely. I think if you go look at things like Skype or Zoom, here we are. I'm sitting at my home and I'm having an interview and a discussion with you. I think that's the use of Skype, Zoom, Blue Jeans, all of those online platforms. I think we're going to see that growing. That old adage of a meeting that could have been an email. I think we're going to see a lot of that becoming realization, where people realize you don't actually have to fly across the country to have a meeting. You can have a perfectly good meeting over an online platform. From a media perspective, we've also seen a lot of the media owners change their use. So as an example, Ster-Kinekor. So Ster-Kinekor have changed their online booking platform now. Every movie can only take about 100 people that can come into the cinema. And the platform automatically distributes the seating so that people don't sit next to each other. So I think that those are little changes that we're seeing that media platforms and that consumers are doing in order to become to adapt to this new reality that we live in.
All right, Chris, just briefly take us through the rest of the 25 points that you guys found, perhaps one or two that you think you'd like to highlight this morning.
Look, we spoke a little bit about I think the big one for us is any eventing being taken away. I think is a big blow for eventing and hospitality companies. All of those eventing and hospitality companies get funded once they host an event or place where there is going to be hospitality. And they're taking an absolute beating. When the event isn't happening, that's a lot of jobs being lost. So I think for us, first and foremost, is that job loss that I think we need to mitigate against. Secondly, I think it's the big knock that sponsorships are going to take. Sports sponsorships, brands invest billions of rands and billions of dollars into sports sponsorships. There's a lot of talk around brands investing into the Olympic Games. We still don't know whether the Olympic Games are going ahead or not. If the Olympic Games gets postponed or cancelled, it's got a massive implication from a pure sponsorship perspective, but also from a broadcast perspective. A lot of television platforms make big money off the sponsorship, which is conceivably not happening anymore. So I think those are the two big ones that we believe will have implications beyond just media habits from a consumer perspective.
All right, Chris, that's where we'll have to leave it for this morning. Hopefully you get to Netflix and chill over this weekend as we try and find a way of dealing with this COVID-19 outbreak and its impact on various industries. That there was Group Marketing Director at Park Advertising, Chris Berta, who was speaking to us about the impact of COVID-19 on the South African media and advertising industry.